Hello, dear friends. It is Dr. Sarah. Welcome to Eating for Your Brain Part 2. Nutrigenomics and epidemiological research make it very clear that food does impact our mental and our physical health. However, there is so much conflicting information out there. It makes many people confused as to what the best diet is for them to optimize their body and their brain. So in my previous video, we talked about how nutrition fuels the brain and how to enhance it by avoiding substances that actually could harm it. This way we can optimize the nutrition that we do take in. Now I want to review some of the key categories that actually help support the brain's foundational biochemistry and biology. By focusing on these aspects, we can avoid dietary restrictions and dietary rules and simplify how to eat for your brain. Now, as always, all the resources, the references, and the links to the articles will be available in this accompanying article as well as in the resource section. So let's get started. First of all, how does food fuel the brain? There's been a lot of recent emphasis on how diet and lifestyle impacts our health based on the Make America Healthy's Commission's report. And this has led many people to desire to eat cleaner. But there, again, is contradictory information out there that makes it hard for people to decipher between different people's experts' opinions and what the research says. So it's important to understand how nutrition impacts the brain on the biological and biochemical level. And that is because if we know the basic biochemistry and biology, it's hard to argue with the fact that the brain needs certain nutrition in order to function at its best. Now, some of the ways that nutrition does impact the brain are through supporting brain development, assisting in signaling networks and neurotransmitter production, enhancing cognition and memory, aiding in the proper removal of cellular debris so that it can provide building blocks for cellular metabolism, providing antioxidants and nutrients to assist cellular function and prevent brain degeneration and deterioration, and nutrition can fuel the microbiome and help them make the metabolites that communicate with the brain through the gut-brain axis. Now, to further boost brain health, we have to know what not to eat for a better mood. So we want to avoid harmful substances that rob it of the nutrients it needs and can lead to inflammation. So what we want to do is minimize the consumptions of foods with high levels of pesticides, herbicides, and chemicals. And this will help decrease the detrimental effect of them. And we can also do things as well to add in to decrease their harmful effects. So some of the suggestions that I discussed in the previous video were purchasing organic foods if they were accessible, avoiding the dirty dozen, which is the top 12 produce items with the highest amount of pesticides, eating low mercury seafood, avoiding plastics. And then we can add in detoxifying and brain supporting foods such as cruciferous vegetables. We're talking your broccoli and your cauliflower and your kale, for example. And then using essential oils as seasoning because they provide antioxidant protection and they can also help you detoxify. Again, minuscule amounts when we're talking about using essential oils in cooking. So within this framework, we have to consider that there is food insecurity and the socioeconomics of healthy eating. So food and what people choose to eat is more than an individual choice. It's a societal issue. We need to be supportive of that and tolerant. So now that we have some of the key concepts, I want to dive deeper into the details of how we can eat to specifically nourish the brain and support our mental health. So when I'm doing protocols for supporting brain health, I like to think of how do we get in the key foundational building blocks for the brain. And these nutrients actually also help with managing stress, anxiety, and preventing mental health issues because they are helping the brain function optimally. And I like to break it down into different categories. And what I'm going to do is do that for you now and then give you some examples of some foods that you might like to add in and help to optimize your brain health. So the first category are antioxidants and polyphenols. And these help to protect from neuroinflammation and brain degeneration. Some examples are basically any foods that are found in the plant family. So we're thinking of berries. We're also thinking of things such as veggies and fruits in general. And green tea and dark chocolate contain these polyphenols, which are a lot of fun for people to add into their diet. Probiotics and fiber is a second category, and because these actually help fuel the microbiome, and we know about that gut-brain link. So if you want to get them from food, you want to think fermented foods such as kimchi and sauerkraut. These contain microorganisms that are beneficial for our gut bugs. You also want to think of your fiber-rich foods again, which are your fruit and your veggies. And also, remember that if you do have histamine issues, and you'll know it if you do, you have to be mindful of not eating too many fermented foods, at least until that gets under control. We also want to consider the third category, which are protein-rich foods. These provide amino acids to build neurotransmitters and assist with cellular function. So we think of things like lean proteins and eggs. They contain those amino acids and B vitamins for better function. And then we want to think of vitamins, especially B vitamins and minerals, especially magnesium, to aid in enzymes that assist with hormone and neurotransmitter signaling. Now, eggs, which also contain those proteins and those amino acid building blocks, also contain a compound called choline. And it's a vital nutrient that's oftentimes grouped in with the B vitamins because it acts similarly. And this actually assists with memory and nerve transmission. Nuts and seeds are really good for vitamin and minerals for brain health and cognition as well. Omega-3s are utilized by the brain to construct brain and nerve cells. Actually, approximately 60% of the human brain consists of fat, with over half of that fat being these omega-3s. They play a crucial role in learning, memory, and mood. So there's different sources. Probably fatty fish is the most popular. But you want to choose ones that are low in mercury because mercury is a toxin to the brain. So think of things such as sardines, anchovies, and small fish, which don't tend to accumulate the mercury, such as small varieties of salmon. Nuts and seeds can also contain omega-3s as a vegetarian source. Walnuts are specifically ones that are higher in omega-3, and they also contain brain-boosting nutrients. There's this thing called doctrine of signatures where plants can actually look like what they're good for. And if we think of walnuts, they look like little brains. Some other things that omega-3s are good for are slowing age-related mental decline and preventing Alzheimer's disease. These are some of the studies that show a link. Increasing gray matter in the brain, which contains the nerve cells for decision-making, memory, and emotions. And then cognitive health. There was an older article that kind of summarized in 2008 how these different nutrients impact brain functioning through neurotransmitter formation and providing the substances they needed for mood. And I'll have a link to that in the video description and the accompanying article. But basically, he really highlighted how that these nutrients are needed for neurotransmitter formation, like I said, and the accumulating evidence about how there's a link between higher fish consumption and omega-3s and incidence of mental health disorders. I also have a chart in the accompanying article, which provides a list of foods that support specific neurotransmitters. So if you have a functional medicine doctor that's tested your neurotransmitters or brain functioning patterns on a PET scan, or you just know you need specific neurotransmitters based on questionnaires, this little chart can be pretty handy dandy for you and your practitioner. When we looked at a balanced and colorful diet, you can see that if you include these foods, you can have a lot of phytonutrients, which are, again, these plant compounds that provide a lot of antioxidants and beneficial effects to our body, and have a balanced macronutrient diet that isn't too extreme. Then there are many foods that you can enjoy. There's other foods in the categories. I just provided some basic ones that you can pick out, like that are protein, that are maybe have different polyphenols. Maybe some of the ones I mentioned, you have different veggies and fruits that you want to eat. But what you just want to focus on is, do I have the basic building blocks for the brain by looking at these key categories? And when we think about right now, a lot of focus is on what do we eliminate for, say, weight loss or for specific conditions, and various food categories or groups are demonized. But long-term restriction can cause a lot of problems. It can cause mental health disorders, eating disorders, and other complications. In fact, it shows that people who skip meals often tend to have mood disorders. And we want to think about nourishing the brain rather than being obsessively focused and preoccupied with food triggers, because if we give the body what it needs, it usually functions better than if we take away stuff that could actually be helpful. So if we summarize everything that we learned, when we eat from a variety of food sources that contain the building blocks of brain health, so we're thinking of things like antioxidants, probiotics, lean protein, vitamins and minerals, and omega-3 fatty acids, we can do wonders for our mood and cognition. There's a lot of conflicting information, and this makes it hard, I know, for people to decipher what's best. But if we focus on how food influences the brain's biochemistry and biology, we can concentrate on supportive nutrition and bypass dietary diatribes. And one more thing before we conclude with this video. I'm a naturopathic and functional doctor, so I really believe in personalized medicine. And how I personalize people's dietary and lifestyle suggestions comes down to a process. So, what I'll do is first determine one's specific nutrient needs, and then I'll consider if they have any genetic differences in nutrient utilizations based on either lab testing, but more often based on clinical symptoms and brain questionnaires that they give me. And then I provide foods that enhance their brain while also putting equal emphasis, and this is important, on other forms of nourishment because these are also important for your brain and body health. So this means adequate rest, advocating for spending time with loved ones, spending quality time in play. Those are some of the ones most people miss. A lot of people know about diet and exercise. So I know that people don't have maybe the available funds or just access to naturopathic and functional medicine practitioners. So this general information I hope is super helpful for you for brain health. And I'd love to hear from you what you thought and what are your favorite foods in each category. I also want to remind you, I do have a program coming up specifically focusing on how to fuel your brain for a better life and helping to create a mind-body transformation on all different levels. Thank you so much for taking the time to learn how to nurture and nourish your brain and your body, mind, and spirit. Take gentle care, and I'll be back with you real soon. And please subscribe to the channel. It'll help out a lot in attracting more people to the channel and maybe even getting some cool guests in the future. Take care.